Hi everybody, my name is Itay Sharfi and welcome to Itay on Software. In this video, I would like to talk about how to handle or how to think about compensation, especially a lower compensation for an offer that you're getting. When I say lower compensation, that could be maybe in absolute terms, maybe it's towards the maybe 60K yearly. And when I say lower compensation, that might be just lower compensation compared to your current position. So there might be some good reasons and some bad reasons for that, and sometimes you would be okay with accepting that offer, and sometimes not. So the reason I'm created this video is because I heard both ways. I heard people saying, you know what, if it's a lower offer, it actually means a good thing. It actually means that potentially I would be safer there with the career long term. And I also heard people saying that if it's a low offer, maybe I'm valued less, or maybe there is more competition. So let's talk about that and let's start. So, four valid reasons, good reasons for accepting lower salary. Number one, you don't have experience. So there is a reasons why interns get paid less, or sometimes they even do it for free at some circumstances. The reason is because when you don't have experience, the company does not pay you as much because they need to train you. And there are many people without experience. This is perfectly fine when you're moving into a new field or when you're doing a career change. Potentially, it's going to be a lower salary at the beginning. The strategy for this is just make sure that this is an entry level, which means focus on acquiring those new skills, certification, maybe some side project, increase your portfolio, increase your resume. So this is just a starting position, and that's perfectly fine to be on the lower side. The second reason why your compensation might be low is because you're working at a startup. Startup offering often lower initial salaries. However, they compensate in two, maybe three main things. Number one, equity. Equity in the company is something that is valuable, but it's not compensation, not in the classic term. Growth opportunities. When you join into a startup and you really believe in that you can grow quite rapidly, it's kind of like a rocket ship. So you have a seat on that. And the third is exposures to mentors of very high caliber people, often the founders of the company. This type of exposure might be hard to find outside of startups. So the strategy here is that if you join a startup, your compensation might be lower. Just evaluate the potential long-term benefit. Make sure that most startups fail, so make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Make sure you understand the founders, understand maybe the equity or the growth opportunity, and how does that fit with your long-term goals. The third reason where your salary might be low, and this is something I can talk personally, is because you're employed in a regulated industry, right? Academia is a classic example. Another one is maybe military IT, other governmental positions. They often come with modest pay due to industry standards. Sometimes you might have some pensions long term or not, but often it's much lower. That is perfectly fine. You could be a professor, doesn't pay maybe as much as some of the large companies, or maybe work for government IT. Look for some other benefits. Those positions might have job stability, might have pensions, maybe some opportunities for development, and they have value that is beyond the paycheck. Again, perfectly fine to get paid less in those positions. The fourth reason to perfectly fine to get paid less for positions is prioritizing work-life balance. So when I mean prioritizing work-life balance, it does not mean that you are maybe cruising or slacking or you don't need to put a lot of effort. I mean things like location, right? Maybe you want to work remote. Another example is maybe you want to get a position where you have flexible hours. Maybe you want to get 60% position and not a full-time. Those things have impact on the compensation. If you're working per project, again, you might get paid less overall, but that might be a perfect trade-off for you. So if you do this, just make sure that you are accounting for the value of your personal time and well-being, again, as part of evaluating those job offers. And again, perfectly fine to have healthier work-life balance and overall be happy with what you're doing. One thing, by the way, to make sure is that if you accept this position, ensure that long term, if you want to go back, because maybe you're younger, maybe later you'll have kids, maybe you want to do something different, you will be able potentially to increase your compensation if needed. After I discussed 4 good reasons why you may be perfectly fine getting paid less, let's talk about 4 bad reasons. What are some red flags that you would like to avoid in a position and not go for that position with the lower pay? Number one, by far the biggest risk, and I always say that to people, is high competition, low value. You get paid less because the value that you bring in is less because there is a lot of supply of people that can do this job and not that much of a demand. For example, in some marketplaces, maybe let's take for example basic web development. There might be many people who can do the job in the US, internationally. That can lead to lower wages. So the solution here is just make sure to maybe avoid those type of positions if possible and diversify your skill set. So maybe you're good at a certain niche. So even if you go to something like, say, basic website development, maybe you have like a really good eye for what looks good or for some user experience. That is a good way to differentiate yourself, but be aware of that. The second reasons why companies might pay less is because they're cheap. So, and they don't want to negotiate. Some companies are just, this might be common, maybe less on the larger companies, but maybe smaller. They just pay less compared to similar positions. And they're okay with accepting talent that maybe wouldn't be as good. If you try to negotiate, just say, hey, market rate, and you feel on the other side they might be stubborn and unwilling to pay market rate, that might be the case. Not all companies are interested in paying maybe for the better talent. If you are the better talent, try to avoid those things. Try to negotiate, and really if a company would tell you, hey, because you're negotiating, we are not interested in you, if you just ask once, maybe for a raise, that might not be a company you want to work for. The third reason, which is also quite important, is because you get paid less because this is not software. Many positions in the space might sound like software, but are actually not software. In some areas like administrations of systems and analytics and other part, that might be kind of on the verge of software, but not really software. So in that case, they'll be more like kind of business analyst or something like that, but not actual software. So they're not going to pay software engineering salaries. So if that's the case, and you consider yourself as a software engineer, again, this channel is Itay on software, you might want to avoid those type of position and those type of industries. If you like those things, that's perfectly fine. If you don't want to work in software or classic software, that's perfectly fine. But again, be aware that this is the reason for the lower pay. And if you want to go back into software and enjoy maybe the benefits of the prospering in the software space, that might be a challenge. The fourth reasons that this position might pay less is because maybe you're on a track, or maybe this position has lack of professional development opportunities. So what does that mean? It means that in your current role, you're not developing valuable skills. And as a result of that, companies don't see you as somebody with valuable skills. Now, this could be a reason why you're getting low offers. What you need to do is either, again, go for a company, let's say like a startup or somebody else where you can learn, or take some classes at universities, enrich yourself. It just means that you don't have the right experience. This is not a good reason to go for a company that, again, will not develop your professional skills. You always want to go for a company that has some growth to it if it's a lower pay. So you can have like courses or some industry conferences, education. You don't necessarily have to quit your current job. You can gain experience by just having projects. You can go online. There's many places, if it's like Fiverr or somebody else, where you can do some side projects, add them to the resumes, and based on that experience, you can potentially get a position that will help you grow. So maybe to summarize, when you're getting a position that is lower than what you have now, or maybe lower on an absolute terms in the software space, try to understand why this position pays low. And again, I gave you 4 good reasons and 4 maybe not so much good reasons. It's perfectly fine to accept a lower salary as a stepping stone, but what you want to avoid is kind of going out of the software and ending up maybe with something with less of growth. have kind of this type of self-assessment and market research. Ask yourself, is this a good position? Without getting into the money. The money, again, is just a signal. I hope that this is helpful for you. And if you find it useful, please subscribe and forward it to others that might benefit from it. Thank you very much.